This is Peter from Reclaim the Facts. Reclaim the Facts was founded to combat the spread of disinformation through reinforcing a fact-checking culture and to raise media and information literacy, education. Actually, we started 3 years ago with the start of the pandemic, when the fairy tales about 5G and COVID spread. And in the beginning, we started to campaign for facts and to promote fact checks that were already around. And last year, we changed our direction towards raising information literacy, in short, because we believe if people understand what kind of information is around and how manipulation works, then it's like vaccinating the public against the virus that you can compare disinformation with. Misinformation is everywhere. Misinformation is defined as just false information, no matter whether it's on purpose or not. Our focus is on major threats to a more sustainable future. Sustainable in the sense of social, ecological, and economic. We've been doing this for 3 years now, and our key challenges that we see today and have seen for those 3 years are, first of all, the evil side is much better organized. They are well-funded and they're more popular in a way that their messages are just more sexy, you could say. They're packaged in a way that they spread much faster, and conspiracy theories anyway, because they are about the evil fighting the poor and those without power. That is just more attractive than boring scientific facts. So as fact checkers, we struggle to create and finance a sustainable business model that aligns with our mission and values. And I'm sorry for those typos there. I didn't see them. And this is one challenge. The other challenge that we are permanently facing, and that Marco is going to talk about, is where is the borderline between misinformation and free speech? Yeah, does everybody have the right to say everything, and do we have the right to promote censorship, or how do we deal with that? And the last challenge: how can we really make a difference and identify the areas where we can have the most impact? Our current objectives are to pre-bunk. For those who don't know the word, it means that debunking is to correct false information and to spread the correct information. To pre-bunk is like vaccinating the public and to train them or educating them in a way that they identify false information and they're not as easily misled by disinformation. We also want to connect practitioners, and this is why we're meeting today. It would be great to share resources, because it just doesn't make sense that the same false information gets fact-checked at the same time by 10 different people. We could easily, there are tools to share this work, to share resources, so that the same work doesn't have to be done twice. And we'd like to have coordinated and synchronized operations. And for this, we launched this E-Summit. We would like first to gain insights and perspectives from our speakers' experiences. If you have questions, ask them in the chat, please. Then we can get back to them during the workshop or after the workshop. Then we'll have an online workshop using a Miro board. We'll share our thoughts at the reflection and identification of key insights and takeaways, and then we'll identify actionable steps to apply the insights that we gained today. The timing, the schedule, I should have started a minute ago. Actually, I started already 5 minutes ago. At 2:20, we have no, sorry. My opening keynote started at 2, and now Marco is going to start, and we're 1.5 minutes late. Then we have the other speakers. Then we have the workshop and the closing keynote, summary and findings of presentation, and the end of the summit. Are there any questions right now? If not, I will end my screen sharing and I'll ask Marco to start with his presentation.
So if it worked, you should be seeing my slides.
Yes.
Emma is nodding, so that's a very good sign. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. I want to talk to you about the ethics of fighting disinformation. What does this mean? So when we talk about disinformation, which is, as Peter explained, misinformation that is spread on purpose, there are, I think, at least 3 questions that are important. Come on, now it's working. So first of all, well, what is there to do? What kinds of interventions exist? And secondly, how effective are they? How well does it work? But thirdly, I think it's very important to also talk about how dangerous is using these interventions, because we need to fight disinformation, but the question is at what cost? And these are questions that a colleague of mine, Adrian Rauchfleisch, and I and me looked at in a paper we wrote a couple of weeks ago. We wrote it for the BARCOM, the Swiss Federal Communications Office, and it's going to appear in a peer-reviewed journal soon. So we will have the link. Maybe Peter will send you the link afterwards. So that's the basis for today's presentation. So let's get right into it. What can we do? So this isn't a super easy question to answer because there are many interventions that have been tried, and my colleague and I have tried to come up with a taxonomy of interventions. So what types of disinformation interventions are there? And we look at this by looking at the process of how disinformation is spread. So in this process, there is somebody who is sending the disinformation. Then there is the disinformation itself, the content that is sent through some medium. And then there is ultimately the recipient who is manipulated by the disinformation. And we identified disinformation types in each of these 3 steps. So let's start with sender interventions. One thing you can do with the sender, with a kind of an actor who is spreading disinformation, is to block them completely. This is something we have experienced last year when Russia Today and Sputnik were completely blocked in the European Union. You can get around the block, but at least in principle, you can't, if you are in Germany, for example, you can't access Russia Today or Sputnik anymore. You can't access it online, you can't access it on TV, it's completely blocked. Something else you can do is deplatform actors. Deplatforming is similar to blocking, but only applied to specific platforms. So the classic example is this. Donald Trump's Twitter account used to look like this. Then for a while it looked like this. But now it's back again, but it doesn't post. But deplatforming means this essentially. You simply block someone from using a platform. A third thing you can do to senders is you can force verification. Maybe you've seen this on Twitter, for example. Some accounts are verified. And in principle, verification should mean that the person who is presenting themselves online really is that person. If you have to verify on a platform, you can't create a bot account, a fake, a sock puppet account. It becomes more difficult to impersonate other people. Fourthly, you can reduce the visibility of senders of disinformation. My colleague Adrian did an interesting analysis a couple of weeks ago for the NZZ, where he looked at an account on Twitter from CGTN, which is a Chinese state-owned television channel and propaganda outlet. And what Twitter did was they reduced the visibility of the account. So it was algorithmically suppressed. It wasn't blocked, it wasn't deplatformed, they can still post, but the things they post, all of it isn't as visible as it was. And just empirically, really, the reach of the account and of the disinformation that was propagated was significantly reduced. And finally, you can also label sources. You can label senders of disinformation. This is something you might also have encountered on social media. Here's an example, China Xinhua News. And here it says as a label, this is China state-affiliated media. This would be an example of labeling sources without blocking them, without deplatforming. So if we go on to the second step in the disinformation chain, what can you do to the content itself, to the disinformation itself? So one thing you can do, which is fairly obvious, you can delete content. This is done on a regular basis. Here's an example from Twitter. So when a tweet is deleted by Twitter because it violates the rules, you get this message. I mean, this is something that's done quite often. Another thing you can do is reduce the visibility of content. So this is very similar to reducing the visibility of senders, but it's applied to singular pieces of content. So a sender isn't wholesale reduced in its visibility. It's just some things that they send out are suppressed algorithmically. And thirdly, you can also label content. So not just label senders, but the content they send out. We have seen this during the pandemic. Twitter, for example, has labeled tweets about or related to COVID-19, to the pandemic. And this was a label, and you could click on it and receive additional information. And then finally, in the recipient category, there are a couple of types of interventions as well. One thing you can do is fight fire with fire. This means that you say, well, there is this information out there that's something we don't like, and we will spread counter disinformation to fight this kind of disinformation. And this is done not only in Russia, in China, whatever, it's done in the West as well. Some examples are Voice of America and Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, outlets that were created during the Cold War to specifically propagate propaganda and disinformation as well in order to counter Soviet disinformation. Another approach which we found in the literature as well is something we call fighting fire with water. This is kind of vague. The idea here is to have a functioning media system and a lot of good journalism, quality journalism, so that if there is disinformation on social media, for example, it gets drowned out by good sources, by good content. Thirdly, there is nudging. Nudging is something maybe some of you are familiar with. The idea with nudging is to exploit cognitive biases, errors in human reasoning to make people behave a certain way. In the context of disinformation, this is a screenshot from a study. One nudge that has been tested is trying to make people evaluate how accurate things are. And it turns out if you just nudge people into thinking about accuracy, they become more skeptical and don't click on things and share things as quickly as they would do without the nudge. A fourth intervention is fact-checking. This is something Peter mentioned in his opening. Fact-checking is something we all know. Catherine knows very well. She will, I think, talk about this. So it's basically something we encounter every day, and it's very, very important. Just dealing with misinformation in general and offering corrective narratives and just correct information to fight the misinformation in question. And this is done in the context of disinformation as well. Here's a screenshot from EU versus Disinfo. This is one of the disinformation initiatives by the European Union, where they try to simply elucidate what's going on in the world of disinformation and shed a light on disinformation campaigns. So in summary, these are the types of interventions we have found for our taxonomy. And the final one is pre-bunking. Peter mentioned this one as well. So pre-bunking, I don't have to go into this a lot. As Peter said, the idea is you have a kind of cognitive vaccine, an inoculation. So you provide people with corrective information in advance, so when they come into contact with this information, they are ideally immune against it. It's very attractive and very good. One example of this, which I really like, is the game Bad News. You can try this out after the summit. It's an online game available in different languages. And the really fun aspect of it is you play this game in order to spread disinformation. So you become a disinformation tycoon in this game. And by doing this, people and adolescents and children can learn about disinformation and how these things work. So the second question now is, well, how well does all of this work? We looked at the available literature on these interventions. Some have a lot of research behind them, some have no research behind them. We tried to evaluate this and assess their effectiveness. And this is the result. The different colors here are the different groups. So these are the sender interventions, these are the content interventions, and these are the recipient interventions. And what we see at first glance, well, there's kind of large variability. Some things don't really work, labeling content, fighting disinformation, like with the fire with water approach. There's little evidence for this, but some things work quite well. Blocking senders, forcing verification has a great impact, deplatforming as well, and fighting fire with fire. So this is now one part of the puzzle. We can say with some degree of certainty how well all of this works, but how dangerous is it? So this is the other side of the coin. If you have interventions that fight disinformation, there's the danger that they can do harm, in the sense that they can do the kind of damage that they aim to prevent. All interventions against disinformation run the risk of limiting free speech, of limiting discussion that are non-coercive. They run the risk of excluding participants to the debate who would have a legitimate reason to participate in the debate. So we took a critical look at all of this, and this is the result. Again, coded on a scale of 0 to 4. 0 means it's not harmful, 4 means it's very harmful. And we see here as well, there's variability. Some things like fact-checking or pre-bunking are not harmful at all, because you contribute to the discussion, you don't manipulate, you don't exclude anyone. But other things like, for example, blocking are very risky, because you might block people who maybe do post misinformation all the time, but maybe they really believe in it. Maybe they're not disinformation agents. The same problem with fighting fire with fire. If you spread disinformation to neutralize other disinformation, you are in effect doing the same kind of damage. You are manipulating people. Now, these are quite a lot of data points. So we tried to kind of summarize them and come up with an ethical framework. We know there's effectiveness, we know there's harm. What do we do now? So the first step with it was this principle: we need to look at interventions which have favorable net benefit ratios. So we did this simply by subtracting harm from benefit. And this is the result. So interventions which are in the negative have negative net benefits, and these should be avoided. Interventions in the positive are not problematic. And these are primarily fact-checking and pre-bunking. They don't have very high impact, but they don't do any damage. And maybe you could say that forcing verification might also be in this category, as well as labeling sources. But very importantly, this is not enough, because we see there's a couple of interventions that are net zero. What does this mean? That doesn't mean they are not unproblematic. So this is why we propose a second principle. You have to avoid weapons of mass destruction. What do we mean by this? If we look at harm versus effectiveness as a two-dimensional matrix, Then we have what we call impact quadrants. The first quadrant is one with low effectiveness, but also low harm. So these are things that are, you can just use them. They don't pose a risk from a democratic perspective. They might not do a lot of positive impact, but they don't do any damage, essentially. Secondly, this is basically the most desirable quadrant: high effectiveness and low harm. We only have one intervention in here, which is an edge case labeling sources. But in principle, things that are in here are the most desirable. Thirdly, we have interventions that are not very effective, but do have significant harm. So these are interventions which don't make sense from an ethical perspective. But fourthly, this is where it becomes very tricky. So these are interventions with high effectiveness and high harm. And this is what we call, in this context, WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. So if you, for example, deploy disinformation to fight disinformation, you will be very effective with it, but you will also be doing a lot of harm. And we say that, we argue that these interventions in this quadrant, high impact, high harm interventions, should only be used in cases in which it can be assured that they have low harm. And this, we think, is probably not all that easy to accomplish. So in summary, we must fight disinformation, but not necessarily at any cost. We cannot harm democracy for the sake of protecting it from the same kind of harm. It doesn't make sense. We need to talk more about effectiveness as well as harm in the context of disinformation. So right now, this is my impression, a lot of agencies, a lot of civil society actors are doing everything they can, but that's not necessarily the most optimal way to go about things. We maybe need to take a step back. And we propose 2 ethical principles which can help in this discussion. First of all, take a look at positive net benefit ratios. And secondly, avoid WMDs, or at the very least be aware of how dangerous they are. I think I've been talking a little bit too long, but thank you anyway for listening to me. Peter, I will exit my presentation. Is that okay?
Yes, that is okay. Thank you. Thank you too. That was very interesting. And I can imagine there's a lot of questions and people want to discuss this, but I would like to ask for participants' patience. So we can do this after the workshop. And I would now like to continue with the presentations. And I think next one, don't get me wrong. Emma, who's next one? Is it Martin?
Martin.
Yep. Yes. I don't have the list in front of me. Yeah. Martin, please.
Okay. You see my screen, I hope. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Martin Roff. I'm the president of ASIP. That's the Swiss Pension Fund Association. So really representing all pension funds in Switzerland, from the little pension fund to the rather big public pension fund. And Peter asked me to talk a bit about the Swiss pension case when it comes to spreading misinformation. One topic in particular I would like to talk about is that normally we have a bit the image that fake news is spread mostly from the political right. And what we see is that in this case in Switzerland, the political left has adapted the same strategy. It's still misinformation, doesn't matter whether it's from the right or from the left. And I wanted to talk a bit about how it's done, why it's done, and then maybe give you some ideas on what we are planning to do against it. So just to start, for those of you who are not too familiar with this, with the pension system in Switzerland, I mean, of course, Switzerland, as a lot of the participants which live in Switzerland or are Swiss know, is a classical democracy, so which has, I'd say, at least 4 to 5 public votes a year where the public's voting. Also, the public is by law obliged or allowed to vote about reforms in the pension fund system. We had a public vote in September last year about the first pillar. That's in French, that's the AHV. In France, it would be Sécurité Sociale, where the proposition from the government was to increase the age of retirement for the female population, which was at 64 to 65. Men already have a retirement age of 65. So it was just an alignment of retirement age for both female and male. And the whole economy and the whole liberal parties were in favor of this vote, but still the left already there acted with a lot of fake news, with a lot of misinformation, and the vote.
Martin, just an explanation. The participants from the English-speaking part might confuse liberal with left. In Switzerland,
liberal
actually means more conservative.
From the conservative side, yes, from the liberal conservative side, exactly. Thanks, Peter. But despite having a big support from the economy as well as from more the conservative side of the parties, the vote was only won by 0.6%. So it's really it's not a vast majority that voted in favor of. So of course it's a controversial topic, which leads to the second pillar, to the pension fund schemes. They are also in Switzerland, the minimum insurance benefits are regulated by law. And to those of you who are familiar with a bit of technical term, the conversion rate, that's the percentage of your capital, of your personal pension account you have when you take it into when you take a rent, that's what you get. So let's say you have 100,000 in capital at the age of 65, you will get 6,800 Swiss francs per annum in form of a retirement benefit. Even this conversion rate, which is a financial calculation base, is written down in the law. So this means that if you want to change the retirement benefits, because we all know we live longer, interest rates are low, it needs to be, in a normal case, it needs to be approved by the public. So this is really a dilemma, and is also the case why we had 2 public votes to reform the second pillar and to adjust somehow for the future. And they were twice rejected by the voters. And now we have a third attempt. It's currently discussed in the parliament. There might be some decision making in about 2 weeks' time. And we know, or we're pretty sure, even if the parliament votes in favor of this reform, there will be another public vote. And this is now where it gets interesting. We have the left is really, it's one of their main topics politically, is the second pillar. And that's what I mentioned here, actually, it's nothing less than a class struggle that is happening on the back of the second pillar. Why is that so? Probably I've once spoken with some people from syndicates and from the left, and their rationale behind it is somehow understandable. It's Switzerland has a very liberal working law, and the unions do not have such a strong position compared to say, France or Germany. So the second pillar actually is the law where they can try to establish their goals. That's why it's not only about the second pillar, but it's more about how do we distribute the money from the rich to the poor, etc. Here you see some headlines on how this dialogue is made in the public. We had just recently published a book from a newspaper author who is talking about Renten debacle, that billions of Swiss francs were lost due to mismanagement from the finance industry, but also from the pension funds. You see some more examples from the syndicates. Of course, it's a talk about equal payment. All those topics which are sort of not directly linked to the second pillar are still the tool for especially the government, the syndicates to discuss about the second pillar. And
Martin,
yeah.
we have run out of time since long.
Okay.
Say that.
So, okay, sorry. I only had 7 minutes. So maybe just to sum it up, what do we do against that? Because the big issue is that we get simple communication, with simple messages, which are at the end of the day, which are fake news. And how do we try to address it? We launched a fact check. This is a good tool for the pension fund, for the members of the pension fund, but it's rather complex and complicated. So we need to speed up our communication via the public. And what we are in the moment trying to do is to go down the same path as our opposition does. So we will force social media communication with keep it simple. So with really short messages, we are talking about maybe even engaging influencers, and we definitely will start somehow an image campaign. I hope it wasn't too much. Took about 5 minutes too much of your time. So be happy to ask some question afterwards.
No worries. Thank you, Martin. It's a very complex topic, which is very difficult to explain. So we understand that it took a few more minutes. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next one is Catherine. In that case, may I ask you? Martin, you have to stop the screen sharing.
I know. Yeah, that's fine. All good.
Yeah, it already starting. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. You should see my screen. I hope so now. I'm introducing you to my work from Kisno SDA. It's debunking special Facebook posts, but also Instagram posts, all the platforms which are coming from Meta. And as you see here, Meta, they have partners around the world. We are also a part of it. And I hope we can, yes, this is better, so I see more. I want to show you how it works, also a little bit how it looks like afterwards in the social media, like in Facebook, because we do not delete Facebook posts. We're just doing fact checking, as Marco mentioned as well in the beginning during his speech. So what do we check? We're just checking factual claims because they are proved, they are verified, and everyone who wants to do it can verify them as well. We do not writing fact checks about opinions, because opinions are not facts. There's nothing. Yeah, we can't check them at all. And a fact check has to be 100% sure, clear, and argumentation. So, how to detect false claims? I'll show you this example, because COVID was still was the main topic in the last years. Since more than nearly 1 year, it's more or less now, and we will have a look at it together. So whenever we just see it, there are loads of emojis, and also some could be some other stuff like exclamation marks, whatever. At least false claims, they wanna attract attention and also to trigger emotions. This is something which is also a hint for us. Yeah, okay, here is something false or something it's not that correct. Like it should be also whenever we have a look at the person, Dr. Michael Spitzbart, it's a little bit strange. So always also have a look at the source, where it's come from, what this person is. It trustworthy source or not? And whenever we are looking later, couple of minutes here inside, so the terms, they may be also very important, because whenever there's some specific term, like here in this example, biology, there's arise quite often that there are some mistakes in the grammar mistakes. So there are also a hint that there's something wrong about the topic. Here says in Wuhan, the COVID infections, they are going down. The reason of it would be because of 50 tons of vitamin C, which were distributed in the population. So we really found out that there was a company during this time in March 2020, so at the really beginning of COVID, that there was distributed vitamin C, also 50 tons vitamin C in the province of Hubei, where Wuhan is the capital city. So then we had a look, we were really, numbers, there are something also a little bit where we have to look at it, because there are hidden hints that there's something wrong. So whenever you look at it, how many people are living in Wuhan, and found out, yeah, that's 60 million people in the province. And they were distributing 50 tons of vitamin C. And we were checking out how long would this 50 tons be enough for 60 million of people, or for how many days, just for a normal dose? Because during the text it says vitamin C, a high dose of vitamin C would be enough against COVID-19. So a normal dose for vitamin each day is said, yeah, 100 milligram. Whenever we are doing the calculate ourselves, we find out that this 50 tons of vitamin C, which got distributed, would be enough for 8 days, only for 8 days for the whole province where they got distributed. And then we can just into the interpretation and think logical. Is it possible? Is vitamin C really enough to that the infection of COVID-19 is going down in the whole province in Wuhan? Probably not. So there's also, you have to look at the logic, and also to look, yeah, makes it sense, however the interpretation is made. And another example is this one. So it's just a remark, and he says it's in German. Actually, I'm looking for Facebook post which gets spread in the Swiss German speaking part here in Switzerland, and it says WHO, World Health Organization, they are deleting human rights out of the Article 3 international health regulations. So they just said like this: it is deleted. And it's nothing else. We even do not know where this picture was taken from. We were looking at it, we were finding it as well, and it was really distributed from the, here you can see it from the WHO, and we found it in this paper. The picture was taken from here, this side. It's deleted human rights. But here you also have to always have to look at the whole context, not just at this one. What does this paper says? Why did it get published? And whenever we look at the whole context of the whole paper, we see it already here in the very beginning, article by article compilation of proposed amendments to the International Health Regulation of 2005. And whenever you read just this, the first page of this document, you find out that the WHO, they were just publishing proposed change of articles, but it does not mean that the original from 2005 is over. It's not any more valuable, not at all. It is still valuable because the competition is not intended to replace the proposed amendments to the International Health Regulation 2005. It's written here. So you always have to look at the context of the whole paper and not just taking out a part. Whenever you go further, you find out that even the World Health Organization, they were publishing the whole paper, what the other member states were proposed to change on the International Health Regulation. And there you find out easily out that it was coming from India. They proposed to change this sentence in the Article 3. And that's in this case everything, but it's not at all clear what is going on or if this would be accepted. So the context is really important to look at it in the whole document, the whole subject, and not just taking a part of it. But this is something which we found out that loads of people who are spreading misinformation and disinformation are doing. They're just picking out those parts which they are interested in or which support their meaning. And yes, in the end, I want to show you another example. This technique is quite well known, especially during the Ukrainian war, but I'm showing you now an example, not from the Ukrainian war. I don't like that much this topic. And here it's just a picture. It says, yeah, it was taken in New York City in the end of December 2020. So whenever you have a look at it and then you find out, is it really taken in New York City? When did someone take this picture? So you can find it out. Luckily, there were other pictures we found in the same collection, like this picture as well. And we found out that it was really taken in New York City, but a couple of years before, in 2010. So how do you get if that was taken in New York City? In the other pictures, not in this one, because here you don't have so much hints. Maybe in hints would be this one, symbols from the traffic or street names, or even whenever there would be situated a company could give hints to find out the exact location. Here in this picture, we don't have it. In the collection where we found these pictures with other pictures, we found some hint like this. And so we got further and further. It is like doing verification, following hints by hints. And it was also a little bit try and an error. I said you already, we are not doing checking opinions. That's just all facts. But we are checking for, and the fact checks we are writing, they get linked with this Facebook post. So Facebook users, they get information that there is a false information behind. I show it how it looks like. whenever the Facebook user is opening this, he still can see the photo like we did already before. He can share it, comment it, however it likes, or to go virtual to the fact check, see why, and then going to the fact check. Yeah, that's not getting deleted. It's just here, and everyone is free to read the fact check or not to read the fact check. In this case, this example is out of data. That's really taken in New York City, but it is not at this time. There are different subjects we are checking, like you saw before. We also have different techniques to use. Every fact check is different. We use different techniques for everything. So like I said, it's a try and error. Sometimes this technique works, sometimes another techniques work much better. And on the other side, we have really to pay attention at it. To do fact check, it takes time. And not everyone has for example, the research skills to do so, to detect this. Where this photo was really taken, where it was the first website which it got spread to detect this one, or even to talk with experts for example, for vitamin C, how much do we get is a normal dose, how much is really a high dose, or yeah, just to be confirmed that it is truth or it's not true what is gets said. Yeah, in this way, look really well at the source. Don't trust everything. Think logical, but because this is really, really helpful to detect on your own in your daily life false claims, and do some research on your own. And thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. This was also a very interesting insight. I would like now to pass the word on to Bärbel. Catherine, can you please stop sharing your screen? And
it's Michael now, no?
I thought it was Bärbel and Michael, but then okay, then let's yeah, okay, then Michael.
I can go on, no problem with it. Thank you very much. As I said, my name is Michael Marotonio. Here, see our hashtag. I'm co-founder of Stop Funding Hate now in a German region in Europe, and since 2014, I am actually doing research on how to defund those disinformation platforms. And I will share my screen. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So basically, the key takeaways, it's quite simple. Our analysis and researchers just found out that every year worldwide we are actually funding disinformation platforms, fake news platforms, ad fraud with over $200 billion. For the German-speaking area, so Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, our analysis showed that at least 120 to 150 million euros per year are directly going to obvious disinformation sites. And if we take the next step of our research, the colleague before said it, researching disinformation and debunking and defunding the disinformation outlets takes a lot of time. We are doing this since 2014 with the main focus on analyzing ad fraud. And since then, we have analyzed about 200,000 different web domains, out of which we have found more than 2,000 obvious disinformation sites. In our team, we are actually all not funded by anyone, so we are working free of charge. Sometimes we are 6 people, volunteers, scanning about 300 top disinformation sites. And since then, we have found more than 3,000 tier 1 brands in German-speaking area. If we want to in our case, stop disinformation outlets, it's quite simple. Just follow the money. And all those platforms that are main spreaders of disinformation. So if we talk about those platforms, obvious platforms like Russia Today, Sputnik, Breitbart, Hannity, and so on. Even in Germany, I have to be careful not to name too many websites. But the thing is that defunding those platforms is mainly due to stopping their money flows coming from advertising. And as we speak of advertising, we speak of programmatic advertising. So in brackets, it's Google, but it's not only Google. The more complex thing is to find in this ecosystem the money launderers, because sometimes we hear agencies and clients and digital experts asking us to give them our list, international database, or our own research list of all those 2,000 websites. But in fact, even if we block them, there are still a lot of sites more working with them as so-called money launderers. The most difficult thing to detect and to block are actually the real fraudsters. So if we take all 3 things together, we end up with those $200 billion per year funding hate, disinformation, and in our case also pedophilia, sexism, rape sites, and so on. Just to let you know, our research found out that Breitbart has over 700 websites connected, or actually where or are still connected to them. So if you block Breitbart, you still are funding Breitbart by just running ads on those 700 sites. And if we take a look on how important the knowledge is to know how manipulation works, we do a differentiation between identity manipulation and content and platform manipulation. And if we speak in our case, the most important thing is ad relevant manipulation. We have identified those types of fraud and manipulation methods that those platforms are using to get still a lot of money. Just have a closer look on 2 types. For example, one thing is spoofing. Spoofing means actually an advertiser thinks to buy, let's say, Neue Zürcher Zeitung, but his ads end up on Breitbart. So there are fraudsters claiming to be Neue Zürcher Zeitung, but actually taking them the money to Breitbart. And the second type of manipulation that we are seeing a lot is actually fake devices or device farms, where fraudsters claim to be real humans with real devices, but actually those clicks came from click farms. One especially was in China, that was found out a couple of years ago. So how those $200 billion are actually divided? Well, one thing is funding directly funding fake news, so funding Breitbart, funding Hannity, funding Russia Today, and so on. We estimate worldwide about 78 billion US dollars. The thing that I mentioned before is how much money is actually flowing to those obvious disinformation sites. So we are speaking of about 2 to 5% of total programmatic advertisement investment per year in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and this is about 150 million US dollars per year. Now imagine what actually a company could do out of those 3,000 companies that we have found, what actually they could do with the money that they are actually doing charity for Breitbart and the other disinformation outlets. The global, this is just an estimate, the global yearly loss due to ad fraud worldwide is about 100 billion US dollars. And to make a relation, 100 billion US dollars is about 100% of the GDP of Slovakia. So this is a huge amount of money that every year goes to fraudsters, to disinformation outlets, to money launderers, solely done through programmatic advertisement.
Michael, just briefly, we are already 25 minutes late.
Okay, we just have 3 slides left. So I spoke about the Volkswagen case that we found out. Actually, by funding disinformation platforms, the company is losing trust in their own brand. And the major thing is what actually consumers are thinking of brands funding disinformation. So the majority of consumers are actually, when they know that Volkswagen is funding Breitbart, for example, they would boycott the brand, or actually more than 90% blame the brand of funding disinformation. So disinformation funding is actually weakening the brand itself. And I would love to end just by this quotation by Winston Churchill: "A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has chance to get its pants on." So defunding disinformation is a work that takes a lot of time, but it's worth to do it as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. So we have seen now different goals connected to disinformation. We've seen political goals in the case of the Pension Fund Association, and here we see purely monetary goals, spread disinformation in order to get money. I would like to pass the word on to Bärbel now. She will give us insights into disinformation regarding her fight against disinformation regarding climate change, especially.
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
And in presentation mode now. Just take out that one. Okay. So thanks for having me. My name is Bärbel Winkler, and my presentation leverages material created by John Cook, founder of Skeptical Science and cognitive scientist working at the University of Melbourne. Let me start with a short detour to look at how people think about climate change. The answer is that we don't do that very well. Over millions of years, the human brain has evolved to avoid life-threatening dangers like predators jumping out of bushes, and we survived by quickly detecting and avoiding immediate dangers. In contrast, global warming is a slow-motion disaster happening on a global scale. Our brains aren't built to respond to planetary crises, stretched out over decades and far removed in time and space for many of us. And this provides fertile ground for a massive wave of mis- and disinformation about climate change. Vested interests, political polarization, the global nature of climate change, as well as misinformation, add up to a perfect psychological storm, preventing people from accepting the reality of climate change. And why is mis- and disinformation a problem and can be damaging? Studies have identified a big problem, namely that misinformation can cancel out facts when people are exposed to both and cannot easily reconcile this contradicting information. And this can lead to them disengaging and believing neither. But the good news, however, is that the antidote to fake news is a little bit of fake news. And this is comparable, as we saw before, to getting a flu shot with an inactive strain of a virus. Recognizing this problem provides the answer of how to respond to misinformation. We need to help people discern the difference between fact and fiction when faced with conflicting information. We can do this by explaining the techniques used to distort the facts. And this is like exposing the sleight of hand behind a magician's trick. Once people see the technique behind a misleading argument, the information loses its influence. And this is called inoculation theory. You warn people of the threat of the misinformation, and you also give them counter-arguments and explanations of why the misinformation is wrong. It's a vaccine for the brain. And science denial has 5 telltale techniques, which can be summarized with the acronym FLIC. Fake experts are people who convey the appearance of expertise without possessing any actual relevant expertise. They can make an appearance individually when mentioned in articles or as talk show guests with impressive sounding titles. Logical fallacies are false arguments leading to an invalid conclusion. There are a number of different fallacies. Strawman and red herrings shown here are just 2 of those commonly found in denier arguments. And some are very easy to spot, while others need a bit more unpacking. The argument that the reason why climate is changing now is because climate has always changed throughout the Earth's past commits the single cause fallacy. And this is assuming that whatever caused something in the past must also be the cause now. Impossible expectations demand unrealistic standards of proof before acting on the science. The problem with this, or why this is so challenging, is because science by nature is not definitive. It doesn't give exact values, it gives estimated ranges of values. And this confusion about science is exploited by climate science deniers. Cherry picking involves focusing on select pieces of data while ignoring anything conflicting with the desired conclusion. It's like being on the bow of a ship that's sinking and arguing, well, I'm moving upwards, so there's no problem. The escalator is an illustration for the cherry picking involved with the claim that it hasn't warmed for X number of years. Temperatures goes up and down from year to year, mostly due to ocean cycles. And that means that even during a period of long-term warming, you can cherry pick short periods when it looks like global temperature is not rising. And conspiracy theories are created when science deniers accuse the world's scientists of a massive global conspiracy. We tend to think of conspiracy theories as kind of amusing and at least a little bit ridiculous. But they're actually really damaging conspiracy theories. And January 6, 2021 has really underscored just how extreme marginal conspiracy theories can burst into the mainstream and then have devastating impacts on society. In addition, conspiracy theories erode public trust in scientific and governmental institutions, and that is dangerous on many levels. And these 5 main techniques are, however, just the tip of the proverbial iceberg, as many fallacies can be broken down further, and the current taxonomy includes 36 of them, all told. This is obviously a big challenge for inoculation, especially if you want people to recognize the techniques quickly when confronted with them in the wild. This is where the cranky uncle game can help. John Cook has been developing the cranky uncle game to build public resilience against misinformation. The way the game works is that a cranky uncle mentors you to become a science-denying cranky uncle by explaining all the different techniques that he uses to reject the science. After the explanations, you practice spotting these techniques with the help of quizzes. And as you move along, you build up cranky points. The more cranky points you get, the more you are able to level up and see your mood get ever crankier. Once you've mastered the initial 5 flick techniques, more denial techniques will get unlocked. And for each of the techniques, definitions are available right at your fingertips. The game is available for iOS, Android, and browsers and can currently be played in 8 languages, with more in the works. And credit where credit is due, and that is obviously to John Cook for his slides, as well as the Cranky Uncle cartoons. And thanks for having me. And there's a lot more supporting material for Flick, but I couldn't fit everything into 7 minutes. But these QR codes will take you there.
Sorry, my microphone was turned off. Thank you, Bärbel. I know it's been a real challenge. There's so much know-how, and to limit everything to 7 minutes was probably a mission impossible. Anyhow, I didn't want to interrupt each speaker because what you shared was really interesting and gave us a broad overview over different techniques and strategies, as well from the dark side as from the good side. Now, I would like to move on to the workshop. For that, I will share my screen here. 1 second. So you see here now the mirror board that I prepared. It consists of different fields. We started within Reclaim the Facts, we started on a disinformation theory, which contains definitions of the different types of information. We listed the different techniques of manipulation that we discovered, and we probably have to check the Flick. The Flick, how do you call that, model that Bärbel just presented, if there is some that we may have forgotten that are not in there yet, which probably is the case. And we have different technologies, for example, to produce deepfakes and distribution tools. This is just a very first draft. It's more like a sketch that we will work on. For now, our goal would be to work on a debunking strategy that can bring us all together, which means that is there like an overall strategy that will help us to coordinate and like this to get better organized, maybe not as good as the dark side, but at least better than now. I would like to go through these different questions with you, and Emma and Rui will write down your answers, which you can write into the chat, so that we get like in a normal workshop, we get the content, the knowledge, the wisdom of the crowd together here for for starting to collaborate on another level. So the first question is, which goals should we achieve this year? Which goals do we need to achieve this year? What do you think we need to change in 2023 in order to get ahead of the dark side? What do you think? Please write your answers into the chat, which I cannot see now because I'm sharing my screen here, but Rui and Emma can see that. Oh yeah, I can see it too now. Don't hesitate. Is there nothing you would like to achieve this year? So everything is okay. Okay, stop blindly booking programmatic ads. Awareness of the topic. Okay. Awareness of the topic, Stefan. Who do you think should be prioritized here? Advertisers. Okay, so it's the topic of programmatic ads. Okay. Actually, we invited advertising agencies, online advertising agencies to this summit, but there really seems to be some awareness necessary. Teaching, research, verification skills. Oh yeah. Samia, teaching, does that mean the general public or more the younger generations, children at school already?
I mean everything, because you never know where is getting this information.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
in the schools there are already some they are already teaching some stuff, but not everyone.
Okay.
Ideally, as I said earlier, information literacy should be taught in school. Should be one of the materials that introduced as early as possible in schools. But since this is not the case, it is in some schools, but it's not the case globally. That's why I guess our top priority achievement, or our top priority goal, should be optimizing information literacy and fact-checking techniques, right? I think this is what everyone is trying to say. And then this goes in parallel with stopping the funding and working closely with advertising agencies to block the money. And you know, once the general public is educated about where the money is coming from, then they will stop, for instance, going on these websites when they know they're funding somehow disinformation. What do you guys think? Michael?
So yeah, the thing is, and this is the most complex thing. Actually, you don't need a user visiting a website to generate money. So we are measuring sometimes 90% bot activity without any human being visiting a website. So the best thing is to defund those platforms is that advertisers, so agencies, probably don't have any interest in changing their buying habits, but advertisers should know that how much money they're actually losing every month. So it's a financial question.
Right.
If they know how much money they lose, they probably will change the way they book programmatic ads.
Okay, so the approach is more toward the advertising agencies than the public.
Well, actually, the thing is the public should know what, for example, just as an example, a company like Sunrise is doing with their advertising money. And if the public knows that I'm a client of Sunrise and I know that Sunrise is funding disinformation and fake news, I will probably ask my company, why are you doing it? And probably the next step would be to change the telecommunication company. So
Okay,
it needs to address all of them.
Okay, great, clear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading the other suggestions. Donc, teaching in schools that we already talked about, teaching science and information literacy in school as soon as possible. That's the same. That could be like an important part of the recommendation, but it's complicated. I mean, it's a long shot to achieve. Nurhan said, stop producing products that damages so fast. At least make a range of 4 ages for each product. What do you mean? What kind of product? You mean non-sustainable products? Policymakers. Definitely. When there is a huge demand, policymakers will definitely react.
Marco asked if we should do a Q&A before we start the workshop. I saw that only now, Marco. I would say if there are questions of understanding that need to be answered now, put them into the chat now, and then we'll answer them, and all the rest can be discussed after the workshop.
There's Samir wants to talk. He's asked to intervene. He has something to say.
Yeah, let him talk.
Yeah, hi everybody. Do you listen very well? Because my mic is, I'm not, trusted anymore. I hope you listen well. Yeah, actually, as my background as a journalist for more than 20 years, this subject, especially disinformation for the last couple of years, it was a huge subject, and actually sometimes they can call it a new industry for the years ahead. So according to that, and we can face nowadays a huge challenges with that industry. There is Ukrainian war, and the disinformation also try to affect the democracy in Africa, in Asia, and even sometimes in Europe, and all that in some way linked to the cybersecurity industry nowadays. So this is also a new challenge for all the world, because there is definitely there is a cyber war happening now at this moment. So the idea is we can, for example, challenging this idea to start with the young generations, especially with the young generation, and side by side with the government and the ways of how to invest with a new industry, how to counter that disinformation quickly, because there is no time. As I am enthusiastic with the cybersecurity nowadays, I'm studying this kind of cybersecurity nowadays, rather than my background journalism. I understand we have to start quickly and to move quickly beyond this step. So this is the idea. We have to go beyond that quickly. It's more important nowadays to start with the young generation and side by side to talk and to make a dialogue, a very heavy dialogue with the big tech, for example, Meta, Google, and elsewhere, because those big tech actually I am not trusted anymore, because they are looking for investment, looking for money, and we are talking about money, and this is the biggest step for disinformation when we are trying to look at where's the money come from, and how can change it. This is also all will form with cyber security, and this is the bigger problem nowadays. Thank you. I'm sorry to stop.
Thank you very much, Samir. That brought me to another idea, because yesterday there was a workshop of organizations, of other players here in Switzerland, and I found out what I had not known, which is that there are already organizations and people preparing educational material for the younger generation. And this was totally new information for me. So I added here another goal which we should try to achieve, and that would be something like an overview of existing efforts. It would be great to know who out there is doing what. That would already help us to use synergies. So I think we have answered the questions regarding the goals, the question regarding the goals. If more ideas come up, I can always add them, or Rui or Emma. So, and we have started already to talk about target groups, the younger generations, governments and politics, big tech, advertisers. Who else? Who else do you think we need to reach?
Definitely, media and journalists are a priority, because, and influencers, media, journalists and influencers. Let's not forget that influencers are, like, to be honest, more influential than a lot of journalists, and they have zero information literacy. No, I'm not talking about everybody, but like lifestyle influencers, they do talk a lot about science on TikTok and during the time of the vaccine and climate change, etc. So I think having these guys educated a little bit on such subject is crucial.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I agree. Typical talk shows. Oh, that's a great idea.
It's this one another. This is Stephanie just said a point that we always discuss, how businesses need to be aware of the threat of deepfake technology and all this information on the economy, and how is this affecting you know, the economy in general. I have endless number of examples about how businesses went out of business, went bankrupt because of this information here in France, and because of, you know, so yeah, businesses and businesses.
The public in general. Yeah, that's true, Martin. The public.
General public.
The general public, that's true.
Yeah, but the general public, we're trying to segment that.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. I put it in here anyway. This is the raw material for a strategy. I also added here government regulations, although we heard from Marco already that we have to consider the damage that can be caused. So I'll write in brackets, consider Marco's speech as a note, and that will remind us of that, and then we can reformulate this. For now, it's just to collect input, which we will work on as in an editorial team, and then share it with everybody. I was also asked the question if the video will be available. Yes, it will be. And if materials will be available. Yes. I think we will now start in this group. We'll start sharing documents, sharing know-how, fact checks, and whatever is helpful. And we'll create a platform for that. Teachers, yes, teachers. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so if we have all target groups together, or all targets, let's look at the communication channels and platforms that we should focus on. Paid mass media.
Okay, actually, when it comes to social media, there's so many platforms out there. And which one should be the priority, I guess? That was the question. Mass media, definitely, but how do you focus on mass media?
So the question is which touch point? We're speaking of hundreds of different touch points. This is one of my core businesses. Depending on the target audience that you want to reach and to educate, you need to focus on different touch points. For example, Switzerland is based on their media consumption, a very conservative media landscape. So if we're speaking of mass media, we have to focus on TV, and TV can be either paid activities, or, for example, in like talk shows, information shows, news, to address the problem to a broader audience. And then depending on the other audiences, we have to focus on different touch points. So if we're speaking of targeting younger generation or generations, of course, there are some social media touch points that are more used than others. For example, all Instagram and TikTok, for example. So there are plenty of channels, but to be fair, to be frankly, the most complex thing is to focus the most relevant touch points with the highest reach in the according target audience.
Okay, thank you, Marco, for the chart.
Where is it?
It's in the chat. So it says TV.
Yeah, no, I want to do a screen sharing. Is it in your, wasn't it in your speech, Marco?
No, this is from another presentation I gave a couple of days ago.
Okay.
Sorry, Marco. TV is mostly watched by older people in Switzerland. Yes, but no. It's very simple. So the amount of TV minutes for younger adults is still higher than the total amount of spent minutes on YouTube. So we have done lots of research on this topic, and it's still one of the major channels with the highest reach in audiovisual touch points.
Okay.
I can share some slides probably in another time, but the thing is that we have access to a lot of market studies, namely media focus in Switzerland, where we measure the total reach per channel per age cluster in Switzerland.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so I think we leave the communication channels as they are, because they have
can
to be
I
different
mention
Yes,
little something for the communication channels? The problem is a little bit because Facebook, or Meta, they have now a fact-checking program, for example, but other social media platforms, they do not have it at all. So whenever users, they get upset because of this fact-checking program, because they whatever they spread, they get fact checked, they don't like it, so they are switching, they are using other platforms. So in this way, I think I should still involve every company who is offering some social media platform, because whenever we are just saying, yeah, this platform, they have to do something that does not really, it does not work. Just the users, they are going to change the platform.
Exactly. That's why LinkedIn is one of the few left. I mean, it's very popular because then you have Rumble and other, which are platform dedicated to disinformation. But LinkedIn doesn't have any.
Telegram is really
Telegram and LinkedIn. This is correct. So that's why I think this question, which platform should we focus on, channels, platform, I think that one needs proper research and prioritizing. I don't know if we can actually come into an answer, because you know, I mean, you need a specific strategy for each platform.
Samir raised his hand.
Yes, Peter, thank you. Yeah, actually, I agree with Catherine about fact-checking, especially with Meta, Facebook, and other. But definitely with Facebook, I witnessed this experience with when I'm writing something. You know, when I put a post or something about it. Definitely, there is no quick channels to fact-checking what I'm writing now. When I put that post, maybe after an hour or two, I've got a message from Meta that there is something, you know, it's not good that you posted later on. And when I challenged them about it, it's about 24 hours. They told me, oh, that's okay, the post is good, and we are sorry about this. It's definitely, there is no at once, for example, you know, response from that. And nowadays, if we are thinking for artificial intelligence nowadays with ChatGPT and Bing with ChatGPT, you know, cooperation, this is most important if we are thinking to deal with the artificial intelligence to counter this information quickly, rather than to put it in a post and later on there is a team behind in Facebook or LinkedIn. They can reconsider that post, is it good or not, because I understand there's some point there's people also can challenge me that this is not a good post, or this is a graphic post. This is the idea. So artificial intelligence is very important nowadays, and I think we can consider it as a big step to put artificial intelligence also with disinformation. Thank you.
Should that be a goal, Samir? The application of AI?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely, Peter. I think because we have to go beyond disinformation, you know, technique nowadays. It is huge industry. For example, last a couple of 2 days, I listened a podcast from The Guardians. The Guardian, there is a 2 or more than 3 or 4 undercover journalists when they are trying to intervene between a group of people. They are in Israel or somewhere in Cyprus. They are trying, you know, to manipulate them and to ask them how to, for example, to postpone an election in somewhere in Africa. And the undercover journalists also ask this industry, this company, that we are looking to postpone this election. How can, for example, give us an explanation? How can you do it for? And he, you know, with the undercover journalists, they are look for how this company, for example, doing something for years, and one of the CEO company of that, which is Holio or something, you know, and he told the journalists that his company postponed the election in Nigeria in 2015, for example. But of course, there is no idea, there is no evidence that this company happened that. But this is how we can, for example, not to be afraid of it, but how to challenge it, how to counter that. I understand that for how long, for example, can get benefit from artificial intelligence to counter disinformation. I think this is another idea.
Yeah, thank you. Put that in there as a goal.
Artificial intelligence that works as well in English and French. I don't know, German maybe as well, but there we have to improve, especially in the dialects, not only in Swiss German, but there are so many different dialects around the world. And with everyone who are talking about it, they said the artificial intelligence does not work so far really well in their dialect.
Yeah.
So
and I believe, because I think Samir works in the Arab world, so I think the Arab world is also way behind, because I mean, English is the most advanced when it comes to artificial intelligence and all the technology. I mean, the artificial intelligence can understand the dialect in English and French. Probably German, not that much is getting there, but Arabic is, you know, because they have so many dialects, and it's much, much harder. And that should be a strategy on its own, I guess.
Okay, we need to.
Yeah, sure, definitely. But I'm sorry, Peter. But I'm definitely I'm trying to use ChatGPT nowadays. But I try to ask him in Arabic, for example. I'm here in UK, of course, but I'm trying to ask him in Arabic, and he can get something, you know, from him, from ChatGPT. Can consider it as a human. I can get benefit from him telling me something, you know, in Arabic.
Okay. We need to move on to the next question. Are there any rules that we need to follow? And here I would like to highlight something that I put in there, which is another strategy that we haven't yet discussed. And that strategy is ask questions and questions and questions. My personal experience is especially from the pandemic times, is when you argue with people who are already infected with misinformation, they don't change their mind easily. But you can, by asking them questions, by forcing them to explain why should we believe them? Why should we believe that this so-called scientist really knows more than 100 other scientists who are actually doing scientific work, then they must at some point admit that they actually don't really know, or they just leave the conversation. For me, it's been a very fast, like a shortcut to come to an end, because otherwise it was like ping pong. You brought an argument, they brought a counter argument, and then they changed the topic and so on. So questioning, that is one strategy that for me worked very well. Then, of course, target group orientation, meaning for the young ones, we need different materials than for other parts of the population and so on. I listed other ones that I discovered or that are recommended regularly. Do you see any other rules that we need to follow?
Yeah, Dr. Stephanie put free speech and what was it? Free speech and privacy.
What free speech and privacy? What do you mean with that?
We have to, I mean, respect people's free speech. This is what
yeah,
Marco
okay.
talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We cannot move from democracy to dictatorship, and so I mean.
Yeah. Got it. Sorry. Yeah, it's all clear. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I can't read everything. The first one is too small.
It's attention is a limited resource, so pay attention to where you pay attention.
Okay.
That means we need to focus.
Anything else? Other rules we need to follow? Ideas?
No.
Anyone? Empathy. Yes, I actually wrote about this once. There was a research about how empathy is way more powerful when fighting disinformation than, yeah, so empathy.
Yeah. Okay, there is a whole article about this.
Empathy?
No, Samia posted.
Avoid, just a second, I was reading what Barbara said. We should avoid things like tit for tat. Yeah. That as well.
Yeah, that is here. That is ask questions and questions and questions, but I'll put it in there.
What do you mean staying off censored platform?
Stay off of Twitter, stay off of Facebook, stay off of all those mainstream platforms that censor you. Move to something open source and distributed like Mastodon.
What do you guys think? I mean, the idea is, if we're fighting disinformation on these platforms, shouldn't we stay on these platforms?
Yeah, there is brilliant information on Mastodon, and what we need to do is get off of these, go to where there's good information and bring everybody else along with us. You can't win a war on a platform that your enemy controls.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people on Twitter that won't move, and they need some kind of protection from all the misinformation. So if everybody who fights disinformation and misinformation leaves, then what? Leave them to their own devices?
Exactly. That's why I think you have to be on the same platform and off the platform. Taking the, I don't know, you take the crowd from one platform to another, or you actually go to where the crowd is, where the source of this information is.
Good questions. I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Okay.
Just as an example, because of what I just said, Skeptical Science decided to stay on Twitter, but to also create a presence on Mastodon. That was a conscious decision to not leave Twitter. Okay.
And I agree with that one. I think you need to go where the disinformation is. And when
unless it's a platform that is only disinformation, then they can share their own disinformation with each other and
exactly
cause issues for everybody else.
Actually, I do know how to respond to that. The common belief is you have to be where everybody else is, but actually the statistics are that you don't get as much traction there. So there was a recent post, I forget exactly who it was, by European Union maybe, and on Mastodon they got, like, even though they had way fewer followers, they got more responses and more boosts than they got on Twitter, which means that even though there's a smaller community on Mastodon, in terms of total numbers, the impact you'll have on a site like Mastodon, where your information is properly treated, not penalized by the algorithms, your impact will be larger for what you do on Mastodon. The people may be on Twitter, and there's a perception we need to be where the people is, but what you really need is the page views. And the evidence is that the page views you will get by posting, fact-checking on Mastodon is greater than the page views you will get on Twitter. Your impact will be greater. If you're at, I can probably dig up those numbers if I need to, but that's the counter argument. Don't focus on the people, focus on the page views.
Which is a great insight. I think that's a good one. If you take the crowd, like, you know, especially the activists, to a place where actually you have more organic or better organic reach, better page view, and then they take it themselves to where this information is on the other platform. That's an excellent strategy. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, but how can we put this in a few words? I want to type it down.
Stay off censored platforms.
Okay.
Or don't waste your time don't waste your time fighting algorithms. I mean, lots of ways.
Yeah. No, I actually, now that I understand what it means, I like stay off censored platforms. Yeah.
Great. And I don't know, does everyone know what Mastodon is?
Yeah.
Does anyone not know?
That's the question.
Can you just remind everyone in case somebody doesn't know?
Okay, so Mastodon is very much like Twitter, where you follow other people, but the difference is Twitter is a centralized platform. It's closed source. It's controlled by Elon Musk, and actually the two biggest investors are Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are very pro-oil, anti-climate change. And so Mastodon is open source. And there's no central server. Anybody can run their own server. So it looks pretty much like Twitter. It's a little bit different. And also there are no algorithms on, well, there's a very trivial algorithm. What you see is you see what the people you follow, what they post, right? And so rather than algorithms and computers controlling it and advertising, you know, sticking in your nose and stuff, it's all driven by just what the people you know boost, recommend. I guess Twitter calls it, Twitter has a different name for it. But, you know, whatever retweeting is what Twitter calls it. So what you see is the sequential timeline of the people you follow. And so I've just found that there's stunning, I'm focused on climate change, stunningly good information there. And, you know, no propaganda, no trolls. It's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful environment. And it's open source. We control it. You know, it's easy to run your own server. Well, not trivial to run your own, but basically $6 a month. You can run your own server, invite your friends, you know, hosting companies who did that. So it's a really great platform, and it's spreading. I think it's got about 3 million active users, but it's just many of us on there believe that the key to democracy is to have open source, you know, with nobody centrally in control. Thank you.
Great. Michael wants to say something, and I read all your questions. And actually it makes sense. So I think the discussion is a bit like, you know, what Paul Besso said. So I think that it's a big discussion. I don't know if we can discuss this now, Peter, or maybe have another session where we discuss each of these points on per subject as we agreed, because
I think it would be great to have a webinar especially on that topic. We're not, it's not so urgent that we need to do it today. What I would like to finish, we have still 12 minutes left. What I would like to finish is answering the question, how can we create a more synchronized structure between us? And one of them could be to have webinars, to have regular online meetings like this. And
Michael wanted to say something.
Yeah,
thank you. Just in brief, in our experience, so all major disinformation platforms, they need money. So letting them starve is probably one of the best solutions to see a drop of disinformation spread. And the second thing is to enable those legitimate platforms or news platforms that are actually forcing good information to encourage them, to fund them more than we are actually funding disinformation platforms. So it's one thing is starving disinformation platforms, and the other is funding good platforms that are actually at the moment struggling on surviving and looking for sponsors.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to this question. For me, actually one of the most important ones. How can we get a more synchronized structure? One, it would be frequent webinars. Like we said already, we decided already, we want to do the next one soon, like a webinar every month, maybe. If you want to have them more often, just let us know and we'll organize them more often. We'll have them around a certain topic, like the question that we had now, stay off censored platforms, for example. I like the title. That's really great. then every speaker can dive deeper into his topics in upcoming webinars. We should have a platform that gives an overview, I think, like a content hub, where if you want to look what educational material is around, that you know on this platform I might find something. Of course, you can also Google. But if we work together and, for example, there is one editorial team and you can send that to them and then they publish it on the platform. This may be more structured than when people have to Google for something. Invest more in OSINT. Oh yeah, yeah.
May I speak?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so stay off censored platforms. Google is one of the censored platforms. In the chats, I'm just putting a link about examples of censorship by Google and YouTube. If you need a website with links to good content, I can trivially put one up for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll look into this. We'll look into this website in details.
Yeah, I've saved it here.
Of political canon, yeah, it is interesting stuff. We'll have a look at this in details.
Yeah, there's information there. If you do /Facebook, censorship by Facebook, and Meta /Twitter, censorship by Twitter. And my focus, of course, is on climate change.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
A channel public folder with resources to check functional literacy in different population. I'm trying to understand what exactly you mean, Ricardo. A channel public folder with resources.
Yeah, one of the limitations is that most of the information that has been shared today relates to developed countries, Germany, UK, the US. But as some people were mentioning, developing countries have different and multiple challenges. And it is important to understand functional literacy. Functional literacy refers to the way that people can manage information, how they process information. And generally misinformation speed ups in some societies because functional literacy is quite low. So having tools to address, for example, functional literacy will help different scientists or fact checkers to see what can be done in different cultures. A particular example, I am a medical doctor and I work in health literacy. So there are ways that we can assess health literacy and understanding about health information in populations. And then with that information, we can try to understand what are the focus points in which we have to create strategies to help communities. So if they are having difficulties understanding, for example, dosages, so then we can create programs to explain dosages or the principles of pharmacology or the principles of how healthcare systems work. That is what I refer to functional literacy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you add this?
Yeah, here.
That's to consider this. The resources, it's part of the hub that we want to create. So this could be an added element.
Yeah. What does build a verified status with an overarching org that builds credibility? Oh, yeah, I get it. Okay. Yeah. That will be a challenge.
Paul, just to comment on this, polarization is already the case. It's the case since 2016. It started in the US and then it spread all across Europe, and the countries are polarized when it comes to actually many subjects. I think Marco spoke about this as well, right?
I didn't say it again, please, Emma.
There is a comment about polarization.
Yeah.
And then polarization is one of the most significant threat to democracy and help the spread with information disorder. Basically, I said that the polarization is the case since 2016 in our society.
Yeah.
With regards to so many subjects, it doesn't help the spread of, in my opinion, it came as a result of disinformation.
It came as a result and it accelerates it at the same time. It's both. It's a it's a vicious cycle. Okay, we have to come to an end of the workshop. There are two questions not completely answered, like debunking tools, how to optimize the use of available tools and technologies. I think if you know more tools, you have our email, and you can just send us an email with the tools that you know of, or you just type them in here quickly now. How to optimize the use of the available tools, I think actually this could be also the content for another workshop, which, yeah, because it requires probably more time than we thought. Catherine, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, please, because of the handbooks or literature about how doing fact-checking, how doing digital verification. The problem is the techniques, they are changing so fast. So something which you were using yesterday is not working anymore today. So my best experience was going on Twitter, going on some social media platforms to connect with people who are doing verification regularly, and they are also posting news, what is going on in the ocean technology, what is coming new, what's coming up new. It's something which I get more information about it than in books, because they are old quite fast. That was my experience.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood you. There is already such a news platform, or there is one lacking?
Actually, they are different on Twitter, for example, where Hank Fan has, for example, or some guys or some organization as well. They are Bellingcat. They are also quite well known. They are also doing some workshops, and they're really good.
Okay. Okay, can you send us the list and we'll have a look at them? Because actually I also had the idea that within Reclaim the Facts we could build something like this and use use the platform as an overall news platform on the latest educational materials and so on. We'll have a look at, is it this one, Bellingcat? Okay, we'll have a look at this. And
but Barbara wants to say something,
yeah,
Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, the stuff that we do, or that John Cook does with Flick, with all the fallacies and identifying them. What I like about those is that they are not topic specific. So if you can spot cherry picking, if you learn how to spot cherry picking, for example, in the context of climate science, you are also more likely to spot it when you see it for COVID or something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Without being a subject matter expert on a given topic, you just are able to hopefully quickly spot the telltale signs of these Flick fallacies.
Okay.
Which helps, because if people are aware that, oh, I have to take a closer look, and they hopefully don't share so quickly or not at all on social media.
Yeah.
And if fake news, disinformation doesn't get spread, that helps as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. We have to come to an end. It's already past 4 o'clock. So does anybody still want to say something about this workshop, about how to continue? Are there any questions left?
I think someone in the chat posted something about funding, and I think that's an important topic.